Here on the streets of New York for the making of Exterminator 2, a sequel to the hit film The Exterminator, starring Robert Ginty, Deborah Geffner, and Mario Van Peebles, and directed by Mark Buntzman, who is using more than 400 artists and technicians to create non-stop action movie making. Exterminator 2 marks the return of Johnny Long, the Vietnam veteran who is determined to do something to stop the rampant crime and violence on the city's streets, and to do it in his own way, by delivering a lethal dose of vengeance, Exterminator style. Robert Ginty is back once again as the notorious Exterminator. Movie audiences may wonder how an accomplished Shakespearean actor, who has been both a rock and roll singer and a student at Princeton, as well as a familiar face on a peaceful TV show like The Paper Chase, suddenly becomes the guy with the steel helmet and the black suit, who plays judge and jury with a flamethrower.
I read the material and I saw what I could do with the character. I saw immediately that I could humanize this story. It was a very violent story. It's a very reactionary story. It's a story about a vigilante, and it's both scripts, and certainly the first one, if we want to deal with that question, was brutally violent. I mean, almost unnecessarily so, but I think they were trying to show, prove a point. But what missed is humanizing the character, making him a human being, and giving a reason why someone would do this. I went in another direction. Films that inspired me towards it, things like Straw Dogs or John Voight's performance in Deliverance. Of a very reluctant man, a man who doesn't like violence at all, but when forced into a situation, then reacts to it violently.
Ginty brings some very human moments to the film in his scenes with Deborah Geffner, who is Caroline. Caroline is Johnny's loving and supportive girlfriend. She's a beautiful dancer struggling for a Broadway career.
I mean, that was beautiful. I love that. Oh, that was wonderful. Look, you're getting a standing ovation here. The crowds are on their feet. It was wonderful. I know this girl, right here.
This warmth and compassion is also evident in Ginty's scenes with Frankie Faison, who plays BG, an old friend who offers Johnny a partnership in his garbage collecting business.
We're going to park this thing anywhere I want to. Hold on.
But the darker side of Johnny Long really comes to life when he finds himself face to face with the evil and ruthless street warrior X, deadly ruler of the dark alleys and deserted subways of the city.
Set fire to the streets. Everything will burn. We will build it up again. We will control it. Wake up with my brothers.
The striking young actor Mario Van Peebles auditioned for director Mark Buntzman, but failed to get the part he was looking for.
First of all, I auditioned for the character of BG. I went in, I auditioned for BG, and I did my best Garbage Man. I gave him Garbage Man, baby. I watched Garbage Man. I had Garbage Man gloves. And they said, no, you just don't look like the Garbage Man type.
Instead, Mario Van Peebles became X, the gang leader with more lofty ambitions than you find in your average street tough.
I am the streets.
If you say so. Just so long as the streets stay in Harlem.
Next, I take over the city.
He's such a presence on film that I didn't want to have him as the Exterminator's buddy and have him interfere with the position that the first lead has. And more important than that, I got the idea that as the villain, as X, he'd be an interesting, different choice to make from the regular street punk.
Sort of said, well, what if we took X out and sort of made him sort of a pseudo-antichrist, made him sort of a rebel with a cause, be it a bent cause, right? So, now this is getting interesting. And I designed the look to be sort of urban road warrior, to have something otherworldish, something old but something new, sort of like a modern gladiator.
Mark Buntzman is making his directorial debut at the helm of Exterminator 2 after serving as producer of the first film in the series. Buntzman's story is a unique one. He never attended film school. He did not spend 10 years on Hollywood's back lots. Yet he had a picture he wanted to make, and he found a way to make it.
It's a project that I was able to put together completely outside the industry, without industry resources and without really knowing a lot of people. Just by working on a concept that worked, that people wanted the product. They didn't necessarily know me from Adam or think that that's what they were hiring. They were hiring the work, and that's kind of what I was proud of.
Damn, that was good.
So the Exterminator is back. But how did he get here? Doesn't common sense tell us that he was demolished at the end of Exterminator Part 1?
They think they shot him. They did not. He was wearing this bulletproof vest very conveniently. And he disappears, still alive. And now we pick him up. And it is 3 years later.
No matter how the Exterminator escaped, he wouldn't be the Exterminator unless we found him once again walking around like a Sherman tank with legs and breathing fire like Godzilla.
Oh, no!
The Exterminator films depend on rapid-fire action, which must be carefully choreographed down to the finest detail. Director Mark Buntzman has developed elaborate floor plans to map out every scene in the film. He must manage his actors both skillfully and realistically so movie audiences will believe what they're seeing. But perhaps his most important job during these weeks of shooting is to make the best use of his huge cast and crew so that the day moves along quickly and efficiently.
Well, the key thing, I think, for an action film is a lot of preparation. You know, if you're rehearsing a scene with an actor and he might miss his mark, he'll be a little bit out of focus and you can do the shot again. It costs you a little time. But if you have a truck spinning on a wet street and it misses his mark and mows over the camera crew, you've got a big mistake on your hands. So it's just an extraordinary amount of detail, and hopefully you have enough time to plan it all out and do it so that it's just chipping off a piece of it each day.
To build the non-stop action sequence in the film when X's band of thugs arrive to put an end to the Exterminator's one-man army, Buntzman is everywhere. He's huddling with his key crew members to review the scene. He makes final preparations for the elaborate stunt work with stunt coordinator Ted Duncan. He stands right next to the cameraman in order to understand exactly how the camera will capture the scene. The scene must be put together in stages. First, a master shot is set up with the cars driving into the warehouse, streaming past a menacing silhouette of the street warrior X. This shot is of primary importance because it communicates the geography of the scene to the audience. Once the audience has its bearings, the rest of the scene will make perfect visual sense. Then director Buntzman and his crew move in for the particulars, the individual shots which operate like pieces of a puzzle, filling an action scene with its exciting moments. Cars full of gang members arrive in one section of the warehouse. The actors must not only make their cars hit the cameraman's marks, they must also climb out of the cars on cue and keep the action moving. When the director doesn't like the look of the first take, he uses his own energy to coax a performance out of his youthful cast members, to demonstrate to them the kind of feeling he wants them to create. He must be careful not to be overbearing. He doesn't want them to give up their best instincts. He wants to stimulate them to do it their own way.
It's like, you want instructions. Red Rat's in charge here. You know, what's happening? Okay?
Even this small piece of a much larger action scene requires a number of angles which director Buntzman and directors of photography Bob Baldwin and Joseph Mangine want to capture. Then a second closer angle picks up the gang as they quickly